everybody. I'm Gina Duvernay, the Adult Services Manager for Gwinnett County Public Library. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and read the bios of our featured author and our moderator for the evening. Our moderator is Argentina Murphy, and she is the HR Director for Gwinnett County Public Library. Can you wave at our audience? Thank you. And our author for tonight is Rosey Lee. And she writes stories about complicated families and complex friendships, but a happy ending is guaranteed. We love that. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and she grew up on the West Bank of New Orleans, Louisiana, and carries the area and her loved ones in her heart when she's away from them. Her book, The Gardins of Edin, is her debut novel. Let's give her a round of applause.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you guys came out. I know it's a little bit cold out there, but you braved the cold to come out, so thank you. Rosey, I know I want to jump right into the book, but before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about you. I want you to tell us about yourself. You are a native of New Orleans,
yes,
and you're now here in Georgia.
Yes.
Tell us about your background.
That's a complicated question. So Rosey is a pen name.
Okay.
My alter ego is a physician. I usually lead with that because in my other life, it defines a lot of what I do. But I really enjoy spending time with family, love connecting with people, making new friends, and giving people advice in a way that doesn't really feel like I'm giving them advice. And so I think for me, that's how that ties in a lot into writing. I love food, I love fashion, and I love having new experiences.
Okay, great. Well, you talked about your alter ego a little bit, and I do want to jump into that a little bit later on. But the Gardens of Eden, so that's really similar to the Garden of Eden, where we know there were a lot of turmoil in there. Did your book have anything to do with that?
A little bit. So just growing up, going to church, reading the Bible, going to Sunday school, I just always wondered what happened after the stories told in the Bible. So one day I got the idea to make it up within the context of a novel. So I love reading about and watching stories about families. And so my book answers the question of what happened after the stories told in the Bible, but it's a fictional family. And I took two women from the Old Testament, put them in the same family with two women from the New Testament, and just kind of played around with the question of what happened to the women in the Bible who those characters were based on, and what life would be like for them after the stories told in the Bible, but in present day. And given some of the issues and struggles that those people had, how would a modern family deal with those things?
And they did have some issues and
Yes,
some
they did.
struggles.
Yes, they did.
Is one of your goals to have your readers see themselves in your characters?
Yes.
Because when I went through some of these characters, I actually saw myself in at least one, probably more than one. But they did have a lot of struggles.
Yes.
I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the characters I really liked,
Okay.
Martha.
People either love Martha or hate Martha. That's for true. So I love that you find that you relate to Martha. I wanted people to see themselves in this family. That was really important to me. This is a book that you don't actually have to have any real orientation to the Bible to enjoy the drama that happens. I think it's a special treat if you happen to know the stories in the Bible and it's like, oh, I see what she did there. But otherwise, it's just a story about a messy family. Women whose, I think, personalities we can relate to, or we can kind of relate to the struggles that they're going through and how they felt and how the interpersonal conflict made them feel. So I love that you can relate to this in some way.
Oh, yeah. And so this book had me talking back to the book.
I love that.
And I was saying things like, don't do it. Don't let him in. Let him wait. Let him stand there. And so finding myself in this book, Mary was another character that I really liked. It seems like her and Martha were at conflict
Yes.
quite a bit
Yes.
until Mary, I guess, came into herself or found her identity, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think sisters are always fun because we tend to, I think about sisters as getting along, but that's not always the case with all sisters, right? I think, when you think about at least the way sisters are portrayed in lots of different stories that we think about. But in thinking about kind of just the background story that I was given, I love that there was a squabble. And, who does she think she is? Why isn't she helping? And I could relate to that just based on things that I've seen happen in my own family and in the families of people that I know and love.
And then we have Naomi.
Yes.
I guess it's okay if I call out all the characters.
Absolutely, yes.
So Naomi seemed to me to, I guess, be the reasoning, the voice of reason within the whole family.
Yes.
But tell us about how she came to raise
Sure.
Mary, your thoughts behind that.
Sure. So Naomi is the matriarch, as you said, is the voice of reason. And I feel like so often a matriarch is someone who everyone looks to for wisdom. But then what happens in so many of our lives and so many of our families when the matriarch passes away? So that doesn't happen in this book. I'm not spoiling anything for you. But I really thought about that. And that's what helped me to say, well, maybe, this family should deal with someone who's an elder saying, I'm not going to fix everything for you, and you're going to have to figure this out on your own. And I think that's something that families usually deal with after someone passes away. But I think it's a little extra fun when the elder's still there, and the elder can still chime in when she feels like it. And so I don't want to tell too much of the story, but the interesting kind of struggle in the family is because Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law, because Ruth was married to Naomi's son, and then he passed away. And so then she married someone else in the family. But she also raised Mary and Martha. So that really puts her in the middle of this war.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say war. This battle.
Yeah.
This battle between these generations. And so one of my favorite things about this novel is it really is a family story, but it's an intergenerational family story. So there's something for women of all ages. I don't say people of all ages because though the main characters are women, I've had some male readers who really enjoyed the story and also related to the issues that come up.
Yeah. Well, you do have some male characters.
We do, but we don't want to talk too
in
much
there.
about them.
Okay,
Yes.
so we won't talk about them too much. But Naomi seemed to want her own life as well. And there was a point in time where she actually had to put her foot down a little bit so
Exactly.
that she could have that life
Right.
Without everybody else's opinion.
Exactly. And I think that's something that women of all ages can go through. But so often, I think we feel like the matriarch belongs to all of us in the family. And she's got to put herself aside for the good of the order in the family. And so I enjoyed playing around with that and really challenging that.
Okay. How do you come up with your storyline?
That's a great question. So again, I was able to cheat a little bit because I did have some guidance because the characters are loosely inspired by women of the Bible. But I think other than that, I ask myself a lot of questions. Mainly, how can I make this the worst possible thing for this character? And how can this character dig themselves out of it? And for me, that's what really guides me. So one of the things I really enjoy about my writing process, and I think probably lots of authors go through this, is I had a guide or a plan or an outline, but then as I'm writing, again, because I'm seeking to create havoc for these characters, things line up and I say, what if I did this? Then this, and what that allows me to do is to create additional relationships that I hadn't initially planned to happen. And so that's actually how I ended up with one of the big issues that the family deals with.
And do you kind of just are you a writer that kind of has to sit and focus, and or does it come in spurts?
Both.
Both.
Both. For this book, I actually thought about this book before I did the math. I think it was about 11 years.
Wow.
So I got
okay.
the idea. Actually, it's odd. I was walking. I was in Orlando, just walking around Universal Studios, and for whatever reason, I think it was divinely ordered. The idea just popped in my head: a story about what happens after the story's told in the Bible. Now, I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know what my novel was going to be about. And I'd been thinking about it for years, and I hadn't been really working on it that week or that day, but it just kind of popped in my head. But then I didn't know which women I wanted to focus on, and I didn't know what their stories would be. So I just kind of went through life and played around with some ideas, but nothing really stuck until one day it did. And that was probably around the time I decided I'm going to really buckle down and try to really focus on writing. And when I did that, and just that's the focus part. I said, okay, I'm going to give myself, X amount of time, and I'm going to sit and I'm going to look at this laptop and I'm going to try to come up with an outline. And then I was able to come up with it. But then I sometimes still have to step away. Sometimes that's just for a few hours. Sometimes that's for a few days, and just let things marinate. Because I think, like a lot of people who are creative, I get my best ideas when I'm just kind of being. That's what I call it. Whether it's, taking a shower or going on a walk or cooking, and then great ideas just pop in my head. And so that's how I mean, for me, it's a mixture of both. I need the focus time, but then I also need time for things just to marinate and new ideas to spring up.
Okay, good. What about Ruth? She's the last character I think I want to talk about.
Okay.
But tell us about Ruth, because my idea of Ruth is a woman who's really pulled and trying to please everyone, but she's just pulled in a lot of directions emotionally.
So I feel like Ruth, and thinking about Ruth, I think a lot of people are misunderstood. Their opinions about kind of what the people in your life think about you. And then there's what you think about yourself. And then there's the truth somewhere in there. And so often, I think for so many people, especially women, there's a disconnect and a push and pull within that. And so Ruth's a character that really deals with that a lot, particularly as it relates to the different women in the family. With each of the women, they are dealing with some internal struggles, but they're also dealing with secrets that the other women don't know. And they tell a version of the truth to themselves, but also to each other. And so Ruth, I think, is someone who maybe doesn't set out to have secrets, but she's really more of the person who has some unfinished things within herself that she didn't even realize were there, that really come out in a big way in this book.
One of the other things I do think I got out of the book as well, and maybe this is part of your alter ego with the physician.
I know where this is going.
But a lot of holding that in and the turmoil that they was experiencing landed one of them in a not so happy place.
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit about, was that your thought process behind that, of how anxiety and the things as women we carry on our shoulders consistently and we don't talk about it, how that can result one day in...
And something bad happens.
Yes.
So absolutely. I think a lot about the brain and body connection, right? So often we try to separate those things, but mental health is health. And so we spend a lot of time on physical conditions, but not always as much time on our mental health. And so I think it's important for people to really seek to take good care of themselves in both ways. So this book has themes around the connection between heart health, mental health, and the this book has themes around heart health, mental health, and the connection between them. And so that was very intentional because I think we really need to spend more time working on that and realizing that there can be consequences if we don't deal with things.
Right, exactly. I think those are most of the personalities that I wanted to talk about. What's next for you?
So I think it's okay to say that the second book in the series comes out in May.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, yes. Thank you. So that book is called A Garden Wedding.
A Garden Wedding.
Yes,
Okay.
Garden, Gardin.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I don't know if you can give this away or not, but are any of the characters in the Garden of Eden going to present themselves to us?
Well, what I'll tell you is that the story focuses on Martha, your favorite character.
Yeah.
But you do still get updates from the rest of the family. So the story continues with the family. There is still more family drama that has to be unpacked.
Okay.
There's still more work that has to be done with Martha. I'll tell you the first line of the book description is, Martha Garden is a mess.
She is.
Yeah, Martha Garden is a mess. And I think it says, and everyone knows it, especially the women in her family, something like that. But I love the Martha Garden as a mess because she's one of the hottest messes of characters that I've ever read. But she's so much fun to write.
She really is. And she keeps everybody on their toes.
Yeah, she does. And I didn't intend to write a series. It's just that as I made it through what felt appropriate to happen in the amount of time and space for the first book, there was just more to be done.
Okay.
And so I think readers will enjoy going along for the ride.
Okay, good.
Well, I was going to open another question. Yeah. I have a question. So you're holding back some things, so just know we don't get spoilers, that's fine. But can you tell us, like, how closely do the characters align with the biblical characters? Can you give us a little profile of these particular women?
Sure, I can do that. That's a fair question. That's a fair question. And I mean, I could tell you more, but I want people to really be surprised and really enjoy the journey. So we've got Martha and Mary, who are sisters. Now in the Bible, they have a brother named Lazarus, but there is no Lazarus in this book because I don't know how to deal with somebody being raised from the dead as my alter ego as a physician. That is not something I was willing to dive into. I don't want anybody coming to see me in real life, asking questions, finding me at my house, like, can you raise so-and-so? No, we're not doing that. So they don't have a brother. It's just the two of them. I'll tell you that you learn a little bit about them and their parents in the first book, but you get more in the second book. So if you have questions about that, I think some of you who've read the first book, I promise you'll get more about the sisters and their parents and their upbringing in the second book. And so they are sisters who are 2 years apart. They're about 34 and 36 years old. Martha is a physician, and kind of like if you've heard someone in church call someone a willing worker, she's a willing worker. She's always just about doing the work, and she has a heart for service, but sometimes her motivations might not be the best. And if you think about the story, if you're familiar with the story in the Bible, Jesus was visiting with Mary and Martha, and Mary was sitting at the foot of Jesus and just really wanted to spend time with him. And Martha's in the kitchen preparing food, and she's like, Mary, girl, you need to come in here and help me. And Jesus is like, but Mary has the right idea. She is seeking me. She's spending time with me. So Martha is about the business. Let's go. So when there's a crisis, let me tell you, Martha Garden is the one you want around. She's going to save your life.
Yep.
She may step on your toes a little bit, but you're going to live, and she'll be professional about it. Now, after that, you're going to have to deal with some mess because she's fun. And so for me, I played around with that. Again, what would that personality look like in real life? In real life, in modern times, I should say. So I'll say more in modern life. And then Mary in the book, She can cook too, because that's something when I read the Bible and think about that. Martha's like, Mary, you need to come on because Mary can cook too. And I think sometimes people forget, like, Mary can hold her own. That's why Martha's trying to get her in the kitchen. So in my book, Mary has opened up a health food restaurant. Well, I'll say it's a restaurant that serves healthy comfort food. So she doesn't really call it health, but Mary likes snacks. She likes cookies. She likes desserts. So we get that feeling of food now. As you can imagine, again, thinking about sisters and possibly bickering, and there's some territorialism. Because if you've got two sisters who have somewhat complementary or similar skill sets, it's going to cause a problem at some point, most likely. So the Garden sisters deal with that. I don't want to tell you too much about that. But you'll, I think, enjoy discovering what that point of crossover is for them in the book. Yeah. And then back to Ruth and Naomi. In the Bible, Ruth was married to Naomi's son, but then he died. And I was so intrigued with the fact that Ruth decided that she would not go back to her own family, but she would follow Naomi and return to her homeland and to her family. And so in the Bible, they go back to Naomi's homeland, and Ruth marries one of Naomi's cousins, someone named Boaz. And so there are lots of women saying, I'm going to find my Boaz. So we have Ruth in my book who's married Bo, because again, Boaz wouldn't really float in 2024 as a name for character. So we call him Bo, B-E-A-U. But unfortunately, Bo died. And there are people who are like, you killed Bo. I killed Bo, I'm sorry. She's lost 2 husbands now. Yeah. And so this is where we pick up. So I thought, you know, back in biblical days, it was perfectly acceptable to marry your deceased husband's cousin. Not only was it acceptable, it was expected. But in 2024, within the construct of a wealthy family, I mean, I'm thinking like dynasty and people throwing things at each other. It would be that level of chaos. Now, these people don't throw things at each other, but Martha is not happy that Ruth is married into the family twice. And as you can imagine, she's like, you are a gold digger and it's time for you to go now. Yeah. Because Bo's gone. We love him. Thank you for your service. Goodbye. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. Oh, and Naomi, thank you. So Naomi is the matriarch of the family. And so the thing that I always wondered in reading the stories is, what was it about Naomi that made Ruth want to stay with her? And what was their relationship like on a daily basis? And so, you know, I tended to think, well, they just have this nice, wonderful, sweet, loving relationship. And they do. But if we think about the way relationships work, sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones that hurt us. So although they are very, very close, they have some issues that come up and that they have to work through. They go through some difficult things. Again, there's a heartwarming, happy ending. So we know it's going to work out, but it's going to be a bit bumpy along the way. And I always wanted to know, what was it about Ruth's life that made it such that she didn't want to go back to her family? Now, what I can tell you is that on my book tour, I had folks telling me and preaching to me the Bible, and you know it says this, and what kind of families Ruth came from, and you know what they were doing, and Ruth didn't want to go. I know, but in modern day, Ruth has some family stuff going on, and there was a reason she didn't want to go back. And so we really unpack that and find out more about that. What could make you not want to go back to your family of origin, but start a new family? And then when that husband dies, you're like, oh, no, I'm coming with you. This is my family. And then when someone tries to kick you out, to what lengths will you go through to stay or to say, you know what, I'm going? And so that's how the backstory ties in to what I think, again, is a messy family drama with a heartwarming ending. And the reason I write heartwarming endings is because life is complicated enough for all of us, right? And so I feel like the least I can do is give people a happy ending in a book. And it gives me hope to go on, because we don't always get happy endings in life. But my hope is that people will learn something from these stories, learn something about themselves, learn some good skills. So, I mentioned that there are themes around heart health, mental health, and the connection between them. I believe that therapy is a wonderful thing. I believe everyone should have a therapist, just like they should have a primary care doctor. So my characters go to therapy, and hopefully people will, take some lessons about heart health, but also about mental health and therapy.
Yeah, that's great.
It's another question.
Yes.
So I read the book back in May, but I'm going to have to reread again, and I'm going to be inviting you to a book club. I'm just telling you.
I love that. Yes, I love going to book clubs.
But what I really love about the book is that it was not centered around Black trauma. I love my Black authors, but it's so draining to read about Black trauma all the time because we're a bigger story than Black trauma. We're a bigger story than slavery. We didn't start with slavery. So I just love this book that it's everyday women that we can probably relate to. But more than that, I love that they had a multi-million-dollar business. I love that. And those two things just now like, oh yeah, I love this book. And I taught the Gardens of Edin, but I totally missed the names. Totally missed that one. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I got the Gardens of Edin, but they only want the very didn't even stick out to me.
And that's okay. Yeah, and I've heard that from other people, and I love it because what it tells me, again, I always tell people you don't have to know the stories that are told in the Bible to enjoy it. And for me, it just validates that. Yeah.
But yeah, I just so appreciate that. It's just it could be any of us in this room, any of us women, and I just really love and I appreciate that because we're so much more than just trauma all the time. Like you said, life is heavy enough without having to read about it every book. So I really like this. I love happy endings.
Thank you. And they still have real problems, and that's the thing. They still have real problems. That's life. And they weren't always wealthy. And so you learn that family history about how they came to have the money and how much and when. And I think it gives, rich layers to the characters. At least that was my intention. So hopefully it shakes out that way when people read it. Thank you for that.
I have another question.
Yes.
So the next book, Martha, will be prevalent.
Yes.
So would the third and the fourth book be about? How you gonna work that out?
That's a wonderful question. So I'll tell you that I envision the book as a 3-book series.
Okay.
So I think that when people read the second book, you'll see where the third book is going. But that's all I'll say.
I'm trying.
You're trying.
She was.
I will make you work for it, though. I'll tell you that my sister read the book, and I don't want to tell too much. But she said, "Is there going to be a wedding? Like you said, there was a wedding. Like what's happening?" So I'll just tell you. And it's funny. Someone else said, I see the cover, and I read the book description. It doesn't talk very much about a wedding.
Yeah.
That's all very intentional.
It does keep you
all
wondering.
by design. It's all by design. And I think sometimes, mistakes can happen and, things happen in publishing, but no, it was all intentional. All intentional. Oh, that's a great question. So the first book was designed by someone named Jaya, I think it's Mitchell. Please forgive me if Maselli. I think it's Maselli, Jaya Maselli. And I think that person did the cover of the second book too. I'm not sure. I tend to, give my ideas to my editor, and then she takes them to the art department. So I find out the names at the end when I share on social media and say thank yous and that kind of thing. So I'm sorry, I don't know exactly. Thank you. Mm-hmm. It was a labor of love. Thank you. It was a labor of love. I had very specific ideas about what I wanted. And, you don't get to really decide your cover. You can give ideas and then you see what you get. And you can give feedback and then you see what happens. But what I can say is that I love this cover.
Yeah, I do too.
And I love that it resonates with people.
How about your narrator? Did you have any influence on the narrator?
That's a great question. So the Penguin Random House Audio is the team that did my book. And so what they did is they came to me with 3 suggestions, and they said, what do you think of those? What do you think of these? And give us your feedback. And I was thrilled with all 3. But Bonnie Turpin ended up being the narrator. And when I tell you I was thrilled, I did a backflip. As a debut author to get Bonnie Turpin, I didn't expect that it would happen, but it did. And I'm thrilled. And she's also, I don't know if I can say that, but I think she's planning to do the second book. We certainly want her to. So. Oops. I pray this works out, because if not, I'm gonna be in trouble. Why don't you ask me that question? You're getting me in trouble. I'm just kidding. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We believe it will all work out. Yes, thank you. The people love the audiobook, so thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And she's phenomenal, as you are. And the book cover is beautiful. I did get a peek at the second book cover, and it's equally beautiful. But if you want this beautiful book, you can purchase it from Tall Tale Books over there. There's Rebecca, and she's come with copies if you want to purchase one. And then, of course, we'll have Rosey sign copies for you. But thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much
for coming out. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.